Penguin Random House Audio presents If You Can Keep It, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty. This is the author, Eric Metaxas. This book is dedicated to my friend Os Guinness for helping me see these inestimably important things. Introduction. The Promise. Nothing is more wonderful than the art of being free, but nothing is harder to learn how to use than freedom. Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America. In the heart of Philadelphia, in a Georgian brick building that still stands, one of the most extraordinary events in the history of the world took place. There, in what is today called Independence Hall, over the course of about 100 days in the summer of 1787, some of the most brilliant men of that or any other era created what would become the Constitution of a new country. They were creating the legal foundation for a form of government that had never been tried before, and they were creating the possibility and the golden and glorious promise of something called the United States of America. The men in that room were an astounding array of the leading lights of American history. George Washington was there, along with Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and Roger Sherman, among others. No one could reasonably debate whether the 4,200-word document they ended up with is one of the greatest documents in the history of the world. If its emergence there was not quite as unprecedented as Athena's parthenogenetic birth from the brow of Zeus, it is close enough to warrant comparison and amazement. The Constitution was a ship of state that the founders launched onto history's ocean that summer, the likes of which had never before been seen. The world goggled at it. They also wondered, what would become of this great and strange bark? Would it sail long or soon sink? No one could know. And if it was to succeed and last, precisely how would it do that? How could it, being so very fragile? Why should it float for long? And yet it did. Whatever it was that they created that summer in that building has so grown and flourished in the more than 2 centuries following that it is simply without equal. But who could know in 1787 what would spring from the nation made possible by that document created in those 100 days? No one but God. Today we know that in historical terms, the nation there formed has since soared across the heavens like no other. But in 1787, it still only pointed toward the future, like an arrow in a cocked bow. The potential power in that bow was incalculable. But the promise of the arrow's flight had intrigued much of the world. It held great promise in many ways because it was itself a promise to every American, present and future, and to everyone in the world beyond America, too. In his famous I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King Jr. said that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence before it constituted a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. It was a promise that was not fulfilled instantly, and that was not fulfilled in King's day, and that is not yet fulfilled in ours. At least, not in full. It is a promise that is being fulfilled, and that must keep on being fulfilled. And we are the ones who must fulfill it, who must keep that promise. But what is required of us to keep that promise and to continue to fulfill it? What is required of us, of each one of us who are we the people, is something we have mostly forgotten. That is the reason I am writing this book. Benjamin Franklin sums all of this up in the title of this book, as I shall explain in a moment. But the main point is that each of us who call ourselves Americans has a great duty to keep that promise. And if we don't do our duty toward keeping that promise, our nation will soon cease to exist in any real sense. If that sounds overly dramatic, please keep listening. It is not enough for us merely to exist as a people, doing the minimum of simply obeying our laws and minding our own business. Much more is required of Americans
Sample complete. Ready to continue?